Disappointment's relative, as we learned yesterday morning, as if we need a reminder. We get them periodically. 4 weeks and one day from the Fiesta Bowl loss, we get knocked back to reality by the sudden and tragic death of Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 other people in a helicopter crash. Spiels. It's a story that will dominate the news today, which is typically all about the Super Bowl, with the Chiefs and the Niners arriving in Miami for the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Well, you just hate the loss of life, right?
Yep.
And tragic loss of life. And what I've been hearing and reading and seeing is that everybody kind of gets readjusted in whatever the message is, hug somebody you love today or whatever. And that's kind of what we try to approach here, that nothing is given to you. You never know when it's time to go home. And so it's a good reminder that life is precious. Don't waste it. I always tell people close to me or people that I have a responsibility for is that, self-induced stress is something you need to avoid because life is short. And we're reminded of that. And just to feel sad for the whole situation. Not just because it's Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant brings light to that. Life is life. A loss of a life is a loss of a life. Kobe Bryant's life is not any more valuable than anybody else's life. It's sad no matter whose it is. And so, in the fact that it was his 13-year-old daughter was on the helicopter even adds to that tragedy.
Yeah, and it's everybody on that copter has a story and is a sad story. Baseball coach at a junior college, his wife and daughter, so a 16-year-old girl and I believe one other sibling lost their entire family. That hits home for me. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I was like telling Katie yesterday, I'm like, imagine if, mom and I and one of your sisters, Kobe's assistant basketball coach on his daughter's team, was on the helicopter. She leaves behind a husband and 3 children. I'm sure the pilot has a story. Everybody has a story, and it's just brought home. Sudden death from this life is something nobody prepares for. That's why it's sudden. So it's always tragic. It's always sad. It's always stark. And, they'll dig into the whys and wherefores. Reports that the fog was such that the sheriff's department and the police department had grounded their helicopters. This was a thing Kobe did routinely. He commuted from Orange County to the Staples Center for games. Sunday morning, his daughter had a game. He was going to coach it, and he's gone at age 41.
Yeah. From the sports side of it, I look at Kobe Bryant, and the one thing that I admired, he came into the league at 18 years old. He was one of the last, or close to one of the last guys to do that, where you could come in out of high school, correct?
I don't know if he was close to one of the last, because LeBron did it, Melo did it, and a few other guys did it. A lot of guys did it.
He retired in 2000. He retired young, though.
He did. He had injuries. He played 18 years. I mean,
he's 36.
Boy, played is does not tell. I would think the number one word I'd think of him as a player is just competitive.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. And you look at the 2 most competitive people, I think, that's played in the NBA, at least of recent memory, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I don't think LeBron has that edge that those 2 guys played with. And it was interesting looking at Shaquille O'Neal's reaction and the true feelings that Shaquille O'Neal and the respect that Shaq had for Kobe Bryant. Those guys feuded over the years, but I think a lot of that is just locker room banter and.
Well, they won 3 titles,
and I
don't know how you ever
testosterone and all.
I think they both wanted to be the number one, and they were both just cut from the same cloth that they couldn't be number one. I mean, Shaq's sheer physical size made him such that he had to be number one in terms of basketball. I think that ate Kobe up, but Kobe was young, and you mature. Probably looking back, wishes, hey, winning a title would have been better than trying to be the man, although he won 2 titles after Shaq left. And I would agree with you 100%. I think Kobe is the closest thing ever to Michael Jordan. Those 2 guys, watching them over the years, seem like the only NBA players to me that could almost on demand will a shot into the basket. LeBron is much, much more Magic Johnson than he is Michael Jordan.
That's true, yeah. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just talking about straight killer instinct guys on the basketball courts, in sports term related, of course, those type of guys are rare. I mean, as and they're the only two that stick out to me when I think of competitiveness and toughness, and not only physical toughness but mental toughness. The top two on the list, and I can't say who's more competitive or not because they both were Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, and I certainly admired that trait about both of them.
Yeah, and you and I doing radio over the years and discussing pure sports topics, toughness, competitiveness, and effort are three qualities that we prize above everything else.
He had it too.
And he had it. And so the tributes will continue, and deservedly so, for him as a basketball player. And, I would say, too, we all know his experience in Colorado, which is unfortunate. The worst thing you can ever do as a husband to your kids is cheat on your wife. But he, to his credit, appeared to put that back together with his wife, Vanessa, and was, by all accounts, a doting father. And a story that I read today from Arash Markazi of the LA Times, he was not at the Lakers season opener against the LA Clippers. That's primetime TV. It's LA, it's glitz, it's glamour, it's everything, and it's courtside for Kobe and Kobe. And he chose not to go because his daughter had a game, and he wanted to be with his daughter at her game. And that's, as a dad, I think, made me really admire Kobe Bryant.
Well, it's a loss for everybody, but anytime you have a loss of life, it's somebody's affected, and hopefully the way Kobe lived his life, even with the mistakes, right? I mean, a lot of great leaders, and we've talked about in this show, we've all made mistakes. I'm going to hit on it here in the face segment a little bit when we get to that, but I think that Kobe did everything he could to repair what he damaged and took ownership of some of his decision making in the best, and tried to put it back together. And from all appearances, it seemed like he did that.
Definitely. The thing that struck me yesterday, which I didn't think of it because he didn't have this impact on me. I'm not a basketball player. I'm not a young basketball player, but I thought it was interesting that as the day unfolded and as we got ready for the Buckeyes to play last night at 6:30, many people made the point that every kid playing basketball yesterday, if you're, in travel basketball or particularly if you're college basketball, Kobe Bryant probably was a guy that made you love the sport.
Yeah.
And so there's this Buckeye story to this. Dwayne Washington, who started last night, or did not start, got 8 points off the bench. Dwayne Washington, Kobe Bryant referred to him as his nephew. Dwayne Washington is the actual nephew of Derek Fisher, former Los Angeles Laker and Kobe teammate. And Dwayne spent a bunch of time around the Lakers. And so the death of Kobe Bryant yesterday was very personal for Dwayne Washington. For Andre Wesson, it was also meaningful, probably not as personal, because Andre committed to Ohio State on the day that Kobe Bryant retired. Andre wore number 5 at Westerville South. He chose to wear 24 at Ohio State as a tribute to Kobe Bryant. So that gives you both sort of sides of this. There are people who knew Kobe personally, and there are many people like an Andre Wesson who did not know him personally, but felt like they knew him personally, or he was inspired by him.
Yeah, and well, that's I think with the thing with all sports, I know that when you retire, like there's phases that you go to on a much smaller level. I know that I inspired some high school football players or young guys. Well, those guys are now older now, and a lot of kids. I always tell my kids, I wish you could have watched Michael Jordan play. I wish you could have appreciated what Michael Jordan was, and you kind of fade into the sunset, so to speak, as far as people remembering you playing and how good you were. And Kobe was at the prime of that, where a lot of the guys that grew up watching Kobe Bryant play are in the college or now in the NBA. So
yeah, he spanned that Jordan era and that LeBron era. And,
amazing.
And doesn't have to take a back seat, in my
18
opinion,
years.
either one of them.
No.
Yeah. For the Buckeyes last night, they get their first road win, which, it's over Northwestern, but at this point,
take it.
We're not giving any of them back.
No, take it. No.
I said yesterday morning to somebody at church, they asked me, are they going to come out of their slump? And I said, they're not in a slump. And he goes, what do you mean they're not in a slump? They've lost 6 out of 7. And I said, when you've lost 6 out of 7, you're not in a slump. That's who you are.
Yeah.
You're not a very good basketball team. Like, it's not a slump anymore.
Yeah.
That's who they are. They're a struggling average basketball team. And they played last night like a struggling average basketball team until DJ Carton, first, Justin Arns came off the bench in the first half, and I thought, woke him up.
Yeah.
And then DJ Carton late delivered when Caleb Wesson got in foul trouble. So they haven't been making plays at crunch time to win games. They made plays at crunch time last night to win games. It's Northwestern, but
Take it.
I'll take it.
Well, it was fun to see, too, that DJ Carton, I think, had ended up with 17 points.
Mm-hmm.
And the play he made on the alley-oop just showed the athletic ability that he can bring. And there was a couple, too, where he really – the scouting report, hey, take away his left hand, please. I mean, he can go to the basket. He's long. But Arns with offense. So you're getting points where you normally don't count on those points. And it was good that DJ Carton, now if he can do that consistently, that's when I think this team will be able to go. And another guy is Dwayne Washington. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of consistency from him on the offensive side. I think Luther Muhammad, a good game from Luther Muhammad would be 8 points, 2 steals, 6 assists, and maybe 5 rebounds.
Yeah.
But and then of course his effort on defense is admirable to me. I love watching the kid play, although he struggles on the offensive side of the ball. But defensively, man, he at least I can see why he plays and the value that he brings to that team. And I don't know, like Caleb, I don't know. I think part of it is I don't know if he's aggressive enough mindset-wise, offensively. I want to see just a little bit more out of him, and I don't know if they go to him enough or I don't know if the weight loss, quite frankly, hurt him or helped him.
I'm glad you went there because early in the year I would have said the weight loss really helped him because it made him a much more active player while he's on the court. He's not tired. He is much better hedging on ball screens, which is a big part of playing center. He's much better at avoiding foul trouble. Ironic that I say it on the night where he's in foul trouble, 4-7-34. But he is generally not in foul trouble like he was last year.
Yeah.
But is it a net gain for him to have lost 35 pounds? At this point, I would say no. And the chief reason I would say no is because I think it has tempted him to treat this season as an audition for the NBA. And so he is out there on the perimeter a lot. And when he was 35 pounds heavier, he was out there on the perimeter some, but primarily he was in the low post. And I would prefer him in the low post as opposed to out on the perimeter.
Right. Well, I do think, like you said, Bruce, I mean, obviously he has a goal of playing in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't think he's an NBA player, but I'm not as professional.
I don't think he's a starting NBA player. Many guys have surprised me with their ability to make it in the NBA when I didn't see it in college, but he'll have to be a stretch 4 because that's what the league is now.
Yeah. And
when I think of elite stretch 4s or even serviceable stretch 4s, I don't see that in him right now.
No, not right now. So hopefully they get it going. Anyway, it was a win's a win. They beat a struggling team on the road and struggled to beat the struggling team. And
now we got Indiana.
We'll
so
just see what happens.
Get progressively.
When is that game?
More stressed as the week goes on.
What is that?
Saturday at noon.
It's not till Saturday?
Saturday at noon. Yes.
In the shot?
In the shot.
Are you going?
I'll be there. My entire family will be there.
Candy stripe pants?
Thanks to my very good friend Roy, who's graciously favored the Hooley family with tickets.
Nice.
So all 4 female Hooleys will be in the stands, and I'll be safely ensconced several hundred yards away so they can't hear me being a psychopath.
Yeah, but in your mind, though, because I'm sure when you're in the writer's bullpen,
I don't say anything.
That
I just
you're
sit there quietly.
Professional.
I am.
And fume and let all the anger and rage build up inside of you.
Only adds to the stress. 'Cause there can't be the lid can't come off the kettle.
You got it.
For those who say Chris Holtmann doesn't make any adjustments, somebody came at me last night with that on Twitter. And look, I don't go to practice, and I don't purport to be such a basketball expert that I can tell you, well, he tried this and he tried it. I know he's trying everything he can try, and a lot of times if you're trying something and it doesn't work, people presume you're not trying anything. I think he's tried a ton of different lineups and a ton of different this and that. Last night, just to say to those people say he doesn't try anything, he went small last night when Wesson got in foul trouble, and he left Caleb Wesson on the bench. So that's an adjustment that worked. They quickened the tempo. Northwestern was playing at a comfortable tempo in the first half. So that adjustment worked. But the other adjustments that I thought were more reflective of him being in tune with his team, after the Kobe Bryant news happened, he canceled shoot-around and instead took his team on a walk around Lake Michigan. just to reflect on.
Yeah.
We're blessed to play basketball. We're blessed to be healthy. We're blessed to have the ability to get out here and do this. And I thought that was it's a risk. You need to beat Northwestern. You could say, no, we got to get in there and shoot. We got to get in there. He didn't do that, and I just thought that was an interesting choice he made. And I'm not saying it's why it paid off in a victory. I'm just saying they got a victory, and he made adjustments. So if you're going to bang on him and say he's ill-equipped, you got to give him some credit for what they did yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will not give John Rahm any credit. He is a PGA Tour golfer, and I just found this to be ridiculous. You know how you always hear, like, guys on the tour don't know what the score is. Oh, I don't look at the scoreboard. I find that always like, you got to be crazy. Like, how do you not know where you stand? So
determines the type of shot you hit or what you need to do. Be aggressive, not be. That's stupid.
So in the Farmers Insurance Open yesterday at Torrey Pines, Mark Leishman is leading the tournament. John Rahm gets hot late. He goes 5 under in the last 6 holes. And he comes to the 18th hole. Leishman's playing in front of him. Leishman's leading. Leishman birdies the 18th hole. Okay, so Rahm knocks it on in 2, and he has virtually the same exact putt that he had 3 years ago, which he drained to win his only PGA Tour event at the Farmers Insurance Open. It's the same putt, same line.
Yeah.
It's a tad closer. He cozies it up there. He left it short from above the hole, which it wasn't like, oh, come on, hit it, Alice.
Yeah.
It's a tough putt. And I just assumed, well, he was trying to make it. He'd seen the line before. He was trying to make it. He just didn't make it. I get up this morning and I read that he said he thought he needed birdie, not eagle, to tie the tournament. And so he putts out and he says to his caddy says, nice try. And Rahm goes, try? What are you talking about? We're going to extra holes. And he goes, no. Leishman birdied the hole. All you got to do is look at the scoreboard, John Rahm.
Well, shouldn't his caddy be in his ear too?
I would think so.
I'd
Hey,
fire the caddy.
we got to make this, boss. We got to make this.
I'd fire the caddy. It's his fault. No, I mean that's just a mental error. I think the only thing you can do from that is never come with that BS again that I don't look at the scoreboard because that's your fault. And I'm just thinking, anybody that says that, I have a hard time believing that because those guys, there's too much on the line on every single shot, and they're so good it determines, okay, am I aggressive here? Am I not aggressive here? Am I going to be aggressive on this putt, or am I not going to be aggressive on this putt? So I don't buy any of that. And if you don't look at the score, then you're mentally weak, and you shouldn't be on a professional tour if you can't look at the score and determine where you are and what you need to shoot.
I agree
to win. Then don't play. Go play in Monday Night Rec League golf at Raymond Memorial. They got a good league over there.
Aren't we there for the score? Like, isn't that the whole idea? The score is the idea? Yeah. I just thought that was like, whoa, dude, you blew it there. Review the podcast for us, please. Go to iTunes and do that. We'll put a tutorial on the show notes on our podcast on how to do it if you do not know how to do it. This headline is, "This is a great podcast." Chris and Bruce can be counted on to provide solid insight and excellent takes. I like the faith part of the show and how they both shared how their faith and their lives are one and the same. I listen to each episode from the catchy intro all the way through to the end. Keep them coming. Yes, we will keep them coming.
Catchy intro.
Catchy intro. Yes, indeed.
Which you blew this morning.
I did blow. We had to redo it. I recorded a new open, and then I played the old open, and I was like, what? That's why I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I could have the intro ready for you. So, yes, so we got the intro ready. Okay, Super Bowl is here. Let's talk first about the Browns GM situation, because to my knowledge, we don't have a GM yet, but we know who it won't be, and it won't be George Paton of the Minnesota Vikings, Rick Spielman's right-hand man. Mm-hmm. So everybody in Northeast Ohio in the media is listening to the Spielman and Hooley podcast, waiting to hear Chris Spielman dish the inside dope on why George Paton pulled out of the Browns GM search. Do you know anything, or is there anything you can say? Or just, your insights from watching these kinds of things unfold over the years?
I think George has had opportunities to go other places. It was his second interview, and I don't have any inside information.
It was a long one, too. 8 hours?
8 hours, and I just think there's a point either you're going to make a decision or you're not going to make a decision, and maybe the Browns want to be more patient. Maybe George needed a decision, and if they weren't going to make a decision after an 8-hour interview, then maybe he's not the guy. That's just pure speculation on my part, I have not spoken with George. I have not spoken with Rick about this, or I've not spoken with anybody within the Browns organization about this. I just know that if I've interviewed once, I'm coming in for a second interview. I spend 8 hours with you. And if we're not willing to make a decision on me, then maybe I'm not your guy. That's how I would read it. I could be wrong on that, but I don't know. And I do think that instead of wasting everybody's time, and I would probably do the same thing. Hey, look, it's obvious that you're not dying to have me, and if you're not dying to have me, and you're not seeing maybe how the fit with Kevin Stefanski and I go and kind of build that bridge that I can do, and that what Kevin and I can build, then maybe it's not the job for me. So that's what I'm speculating. That's what it seems like.
Mary Kay Cabot wrote a story late last week that said if all goes well and both sides decide they want to make this thing happen, he will soon become the general manager of the Browns. Mary Kay's pretty dialed in, so I would assume either A, all did not go well, or B, or maybe both, A and B, they decided that they did not want to, either the Browns decided they did not want him, George Paton decided he did not want them, or George Paton decided he did not want to wait on them deciding whether they want him. And if I'm George Paton...
That's the only scenarios you can have, unless Andrew Berry is the guy that they want to have. And that's fine if they do. I don't know Andrew Berry, and if he does come, I hope it works. I know that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have met. They seem to hit it off when they did meet, but they don't have the experience of working 14 years together. So I don't know what happened. I just think that eventually you have to make a decision, and if you're not going to make a decision either from the Brown side or from Georgia's side, then you say, hey, maybe this thing isn't going to work. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you can meet a guy in a job interview and say, hey, that guy seems pretty sharp. I like him. But it's not the same as working together with somebody for 14 years. You're going to experience their bad days, their bad habits, their things that aggravate you, the things that you like. Andrew Berry has not done GM work. That is what someone in the Philadelphia Eagles circle of
trust. Yes.
Circle of trust. I'm watching you. Has told me. But he is. But that same person said that they really like Andrew Berry. He's a really good man, and that Berry was brought in and kind of moved into the middle of the Eagles organization, and that makes people who you're moved in over less inclined to accept you. So this person spoke favorably of Andrew Berry. I said, does he do GM things? No, he does not do GM things.
Well, what's your definition? He does player personnel things.
He does football ops.
Okay.
He's the vice president of football ops. So that might be like scoreboard and like media thing, sponsorships, and it could be anything. Football ops could be anything.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it's some personnel.
Tell me what George Paton does with the Vikings.
Everything he does. His main thing is personnel.
Okay.
Rick does everything. So Rick has business obligations that he has to tend to, and I'm sure George assists him with that. But they work together as a team as far as running the scouting departments and setting that up and having a system in place. I mean, GM isn't like a king or a monarch sitting at the throne saying, I want him, I don't want him. There's a whole system in play where an evaluation process takes place from what the scouts do throughout the year to the coaches. The coaches at the end of the year are assigned certain players by their position to give their evaluation. Then there's a meeting of the minds, and everybody comes together on where this guy will fall, and this is what our grade is on him. And so all this work goes on for 364 days a year until the draft day. Then you have your draft board in place. Then you have every possible scenario that not only your team, the direction your team will go, but you're about 95% sure of where every other team will go. So there's a system in place. And so I'm sure Andrew's a very bright guy, and he played 4 years at Harvard. I don't know him well enough to make an observation on whether he can choose personnel or not choose personnel. It's not fair for me to say whether he can do it or he can't do it, because I just don't know. All I do know is that they had something that fit. it just made sense. When you have, again, we go back to the scenario when you have the head coach and general manager and the owner, everybody is preaching the same language and everybody's on the same page. Philosophically, we know what we want. I know what Kevin Stefanski wants and the type of player and type of team he wants to build. So, and I'm not saying that can't happen with Andrew Berry or can't. I just don't know.
Right.
And the other thing that I still have a hard time understanding, and which I think everybody that is interviewed for this job, well, where's the guy that comes in to work 100 days a year?
Paul DePodesta.
Where does he stand? I mean, what
does he do?
Chief strategy officer.
Yes.
Our strategy is to win and to get the best players. I mean, I don't understand. And so I don't know if there's a confusion on, okay, well, where does he fit in? And why is he interviewing me? And am I answering to him? Am I answering to the owner? Who's Kyle answering to? Who are my scouts answer to? Do I report to DePodesta? Do I report to the GM? So I just don't know. I can't think of another team or an organization that has a chief strategy officer.
That's not in the building every day?
Yeah, how do you do that? I mean, how do you put your organization? I don't know. I mean, I'm not being snarky or an idiot. I mean, I just don't understand how, if this guy is running the team, so apparently, by appearance at least, and I'd be happy to be corrected.
Yeah.
I would love to have somebody from the Browns organization tell me how this works. But how can we, apparently by appearance, be running a football team and not be there 350 out of 365 days a year? How is that even possible?
Well, the problem with that is culturally, everybody in that building is in there. Like I was reading a story today from Peter King, his Super Bowl week column. Andy Reid's picking him up at the hotel at 3:15 a.m. We all know legendary stories of coaches who sleep at facilities. The point is, they're all in. They're all invested. They're there. The appearance of a guy who's doing it remotely some of the time, maybe half the time, maybe more than half the time, from San Diego is that he's not as invested as I am. He hasn't moved his family here. He's not here at the facility. Now, can he do the job remotely? I don't know if he can or can't. I just know that for the culture, it's not ideal. It's just not ideal.
But I just don't. I don't understand what he does. What is his job?
Well,
is he picking players? Is he telling them who to pick?
Well, they've had ample opportunity to tell us what his job is, and they don't tell us.
So
if they felt good about how it would be perceived, the job that he's doing, my presumption is they would sell it.
So he did a press conference. What did he say? Do you remember?
Well, just a lot of, we're all lining up and we're all doing this and we're trying to do, all theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. I put a great value. Maybe you don't. Maybe they don't. I put a great value on a complete picture of a football culture, body language, how guys arrive for work. I don't mean the means with which they arrive for work, what they're driving, but when they arrive and what their body language is and how they interact with people, how they interact in the lunch line with the people who are serving the food. All that, is it a 100% picture of who the player is? No. Is it a little tiny picture? Does it tell you a bit about his character, a bit about the kind of person he is, a bit about his buy-in? I believe it does. Now, maybe if Paul DePodesta doesn't think it does, if it's not something that he can plot on a Excel spreadsheet or he can't calculate with a number, maybe he puts no value on it. But I put great value on those little tiny things, those little snapshots of a day